Hello, welcome back to the Waggle, the fantasy golf preview show on RotoCurve. I'm your host, Jeff Ulrich, also known as Wave Goodbye on most major sites, and you can follow me on Twitter as @thefantasygrind. Welcome. If this is your first time tuning in, cool, great, that's awesome. Glad to have you. Always looking for new viewers, and definitely check out RotoCurve as well if you haven't already. Definitely a site worth checking out. Lots of great stuff. But for this week, glad to have you with the Daily Fantasy Golf Preview Show here, sponsored by RotoCurve. And yeah, let's get to it. Let's start off a little bit by talking about last week. Last week, the Colonial rain-drenched tournament, but they got in 4 rounds. Ended on Sunday, which was nice to see. For fantasy purposes, I was pretty happy with most of my picks. A lot of them paid off pretty nicely. Had 4 of my top plays finish in the top 10. Kevin Na, Ben Martin, Chris Kirk, and actually one of my favorite value plays from last week, Jason Bone, who just about ended up winning the tournament. Actually, had the best round on Sunday, but just missed. That would have been pretty awesome to see Jason Bone win. But he had a really good tournament, probably the value play of the week. So that was good from that perspective as well. There was definitely some misses last week too, though, especially with some of my lower owned sort of value picks. So John Peterson, as everyone knows, a lot of people were on him last week. He missed the Saturday cut, only got in 3 rounds. Bo Van Pelt, another cheap player I had used in some of my lineups, he held me back by missing the cut. And then one of my favorite tournament plays last week, Sean O'Hare, did not work out too well either. He ended up going 4 over in his last 4 holes on Friday and missing the cut. So some guys that held me back. I know I had, fairly average week because of that, but, I was pretty happy with most of my top picks. Just missed on a few value plays, got a little bit unlucky around the cut, and that's just what happens. It's hard to put 6 guys through in a tournament or even for cash games. And, most weeks, if you get 5 through, you're actually having a pretty good week. I just missed last week because I did have a lot of guys in the top 10, so it would have been nice to get a few of those value plays paying off, but it didn't happen. So we're going to try again this week. We're going to try and do things better. As always, I'm going to give you a little bit of a course preview, a little bit of a statistical breakdown, and then we're going to go through the salaries and the roster on DraftKings and go through the entire roster of who I like and who I think are some good plays this week. So the Byron Nelson this week, it's the last leg of the Texas Swing. It's an older tournament, but it's one that maybe doesn't get as much fanfare from the higher elite players anymore. It's got a pretty strong field this week. Spieth's here, Jason Day's here, Dustin Johnson's here, so the field's decent. It's not like last week either, where last week there's only 122 players in the field. This week it's a full-fledged field, 156 players in the field. Going to be harder to get 6 players through for fantasy purposes this week. More than half the field is going to get cut after Friday, and if there's a Saturday cut, even more. But making the cut this week is going to be tough, so you're really going to have to hit those value plays this week. They're going to be extra important for you to make your teams because, a lot of players just aren't going to make it. So getting those players through is going to be extra critical this week. Let's focus on that. And let's talk about the course. TPC Four Seasons is where it's played, par 70. 7,200 yards. So it's another par 70, just like last week, but it's longer. And there were extensive renovations done to this course in 2009, mainly that focused on lengthening the course and making it a bit tougher to play. So, there's some water on this course, and it can play really tough when it gets windy out. So it's one of the tougher courses on tour, and I believe last year it was actually ranked as the second hardest par 70 on tour that the pros played. So it's a tough test this week. I know in 2001 when Keegan Bradley won here, the winning score was only -3, and a lot of that was due to the winds. So if the wind gets up, which I think it's actually supposed to for some of this tournament, you're going to see some not great scoring, and you could see a single-digit winning score this week. So that's something to think about, especially when you're making your picks too. Players who maybe can grind it out a little bit better have sort of proven themselves to be good win players, might be good picks this week. So something to keep in mind. As far as statistics go, a lot of different players have actually had success on this course. Last year, Brendan Todd won, and Mike Weir was second. Yes, Mike Weir was second. my career, I don't think has even had a top 20 since this tournament last year, but he was second place here last year. And those two ranked first and second in strokes gained putting here last year. And that's how they got first and second in the tournament. But that being said, a lot of long drivers who aren't great putters have done well here. Jason Day has won here. Keegan Bradley won here. And when he won here, I think he was only like 40th in strokes gained putting for the week. So bombers have had some success here. And guys like Gary Woodland's had success here. Mark Leishman, who hits it far, has had success here. So it's a real mixed bag this week. And I'm kind of looking at it from a few different angles. I looked at par breakers this week as a statistic. Par breakers is the percentage of time a player makes a score of birdie or better. I think it's an important statistic because birdie opportunities just aren't that. They're just not going to happen very often this week. So they got to take the players have to take advantage of them when they come up. So par breakers, a statistic I looked at, as well as driving distance that I just mentioned, and strokes gained putting. So I'm looking for players who are excelling coming into this tournament. It's a tough course. I don't think that it's a week where players can sort of find their game. I want a player who's either playing well tee to green or has really been lights out with the putter lately and is going to be able to sort of take on this course and make up strokes when needed. So that's what I've been looking at as far as statistics go for this week. Also need to factor in the weather. You know, it's been raining for what seems like the past year in Texas. The course there is super wet. I'm not sure how much the wetness is going to affect the course. You know, some people like to say it's going to help the long players, but really, I think it just the wetness might make the course play a little bit easier for everyone. You know, the players, the tour pros can just hold the greens better. You know, guys with strong wedge games benefit from it a lot as well, not just long hitters. So that's something to keep in mind. I think the more important thing is the wind. If one of the flights get a better draw, just like at the Valero Texas Open, that could be a huge factor. So keep in mind the weather. Check out the updates for the weather. You know, if you think one flight is going to get an advantage, definitely keep that in mind. I'll try and tweet out stuff too. Again, at the Fantasy Grind, you can follow me on Twitter, and I'll be trying to tweet out any thoughts on the weather before the tournament starts. And you can also check out the forums on RotoCurve, where we always start a PGA thread. So with that in mind, let's get to it. Let's bring up these DraftKings salaries and take a look. Take a look at who we like this week. So once again, you know, no surprise at the top of the list there. You have Jordan Spieth, you know, still well deserving of his salary. I think his price actually went up a little bit, 13,300 this week. And, you know, considering that he did actually finish second again last week, he probably deserves to be that high. Myself, I will have a few GPP lineups with Jordan Spieth in it. I'm not going to have a huge amount. His record here isn't spectacular. You know, he's made the cut a lot and he played well here as a 16-year-old, but you know, the course last week actually fit him better. So I don't know. I think just for his price, again, you can sort of get better value at a lower price range than Jordan Spieth. He's not a bad play. I think for cash games, he doesn't give you enough flexibility, but for GPPs, there are value plays that you can use him with this week. So I'm not totally fading Jordan Spieth. He can win any week at this point in his career, and he certainly played this course enough and likes this course that he can win here. And I won't be shocked if he wins, but he's just not my favorite play of the week. So moving on, Dustin Johnson. I'm not quite sure what form Dustin Johnson is in. He's got a good record of this event, multiple top 10s here, very good record of the event, but again, he's got a really high price tag. He's $1,500 more than Jason Day, which is kind of surprising to me. I didn't think he'd be that expensive. But at that price tag, I'm just not sure if I want to pay up too much for Dustin Johnson. So I'm really looking at Dustin Johnson this week as a GPP play sort of only because, again, he just doesn't give me the flexibility to create cash games. And I'm not quite sure what type of form he's in. You know, he's been off since the Players. Didn't do well with the Players, which isn't surprising. It's not his course, but he does have a good record here. So I won't be shocked if Dustin Johnson plays well here and maybe even wins, but I'm not really counting on him to win. I'm expecting a little bit less. So for that price, I'll be mostly fading, except using him in a GPP or two. Jason Day, though, is a player I think is sort of where you start the conversation of top players. Day's a lot cheaper than Spieth and Johnson, and that's a big factor. And he's won here before, so he, from a statistical standpoint, fits this course really well. He's first in driving, or he's fourth in driving distance on tour. I believe he's first in par breakers on tour, which is a pretty big thing, and he's 30th in strokes gained putting. So Jason Day fits this course to a T, really. And I know he missed the cut at the Players, and he kind of disappointed some people, but he almost won at Zurich. He's just a consistent all-around player who can really just eat up courses like this when he's playing even when he's playing even average. So Jason Day at 11-2, I think he's a good cash game anchor. I'll definitely have exposure to him in cash games and in GPPs. He's maybe not my top play of the week, but he's just such a solid player that I think he's still at an affordable price, and he's a better value pick than Dustin and Justin. So that's kind of my feeling on Jason Day. I like him as a cash game play. A player I really like this week is Brandt Snedeker. Snedeker is he's just a streaky player, and when he's on a good streak, he's one of the best players in the world. He's third in strokes gained putting on tour. He's already won this year, and after his win, he sort of went into a slump, and he started to play better the last couple of weeks, and then last week he just popped up, and he really should have won last week. He had 3 putts within 20 feet that he sort of all missed on the last 3 or 4 holes, and Kirk was able to hold on. But when Snedeker gets hot, he usually stays hot, and a lot of his wins were preceded by top 10s, multiple top 10s, second place finishes, and in his interview after the tournament, he was already talking about getting the win this week. So I think Brandt Snedeker is a really sneaky play. I think people are going to be put off by how highly he's priced this week. And I think he's going to be a really good GPP play. I'm kind of excited about it. That means that maybe isn't a good sign, but I am excited about Brandt Snedeker this week. I think he's going to be a great GPP play. I think he's got a good chance to win. And when he's hot, he's one of the best players in the world. So, and he can win at events like this anytime. So I really like Brandt Snedeker. Yeah, he's one of my top plays. So Ian Poulter, he's a bit of a head case, but he's playing solid. So, at 9,600, he's more expensive than I'd like, but he's just been playing so solid that I wouldn't be shocked if he has another good week. He's not going to be on my top list of plays, but having some GPP exposure to a player who's hitting it as solidly as he is, and just playing all around well, is probably a good idea. If Poulter had hit even 50% of his fairways on Saturday and Sunday, he probably would have won. But the only reason he was even able to keep pace is because he was playing so well around the greens. So I don't know what he's going to do this week. I could see him having another good ball striking week. Doesn't have a huge course history here, but I'll have a little bit of exposure to Poulter in tournaments, and that's about it. I think he's still a solid play, but you just never know what he's going to do week to week, and he doesn't have a huge history here. So Matt Kuchar, always a safe cash game play with a nice record here. I'm not going to say too much more. Not a top GPP play for me, but definitely someone you could consider for cash games. Zach Johnson's putting is really letting him down right now. He's a really good ball striker. Hasn't played here in a while. I think he's a fine GPP play, but I'm not going to rely on him at that price. He's just too expensive for me for cash games. Jimmy Walker, he kind of went through the same thing last year where he just didn't play that great through this stretch of the year, but then he played well at the US Open. So I'm fine fading Jimmy Walker sort of until the US Open. I think he's maybe just a little bit out of form. He's not super out of form. Even when Jimmy Walker's playing bad, he's still better than 90% of the players. So you could have a little bit of exposure to Jimmy Walker on this course. He could certainly do well. He's, one of the best players in the world. He's just going through a little slump, I think. So I'm not going to have a ton of exposure, but definitely not a bad play. He's still Jimmy Walker. He still wins. It seems like once in every 10 tournaments or something. So definitely someone to keep in mind. And Ryan Palmer also sort of in the same category. Missed the cut last week and burned a lot of people, but he's got a good record here. He's got multiple top 10s. He's from Texas. He's familiar with the course. Again, a guy who does well in a lot of statistical categories I'm looking at this week. So Brian Palmer probably will be sort of low owned just because of how poorly he played last week. So Someone I'll have exposure to in GPPs, Ryan Palmer for sure. I'm going to just because of the under-owned factor. I think people will skip him, and he could bounce back really nicely. So Ryan Palmer, definitely someone to keep in mind. One of my main plays this week is Gary Woodland. Woodland has he had a slow start to the season, but lately he's really come on. He was T4 at Wells Fargo, and he was second place at the match play, which doesn't show up here. But in both the Wells Fargo and the match play, he was putting great, and he actually led the field at Wells Fargo in strokes gained putting. So that's something important to note about Gary Woodland, because normally his game is built around power and distance, and his putter is usually what lets him down. So when he putts well, that's usually when he's won on tour. And he's also got a really nice record at this event. He twice has actually come into the final round either in a share of the lead or really close to it, and then he's sort of bombed on Sunday. But he's made 4 or 5 cuts in a row at this event, and he just seems well suited for the course. You know, he hits it really long, so he's like Keegan Bradley, who has also had success here, and I just think he's really trending in the right direction right now. You know, he looked really good at the match play. I know he had a bad Players Championship, but if you write off that event, 2 of his last 3 events, he's essentially finished 4th and 2nd. So Gary Woodland's someone I'm going to have a lot of exposure to this week. He's kind of my not really a dark horse. He's kind of my pick to win this event. We'll see. I think it sets up really well for him this week. So I really like Gary Woodland. He's one of my main plays. And right below him, another person who I think will have a lot of exposure to, a lot of people have exposure to, is Justin Thomas. You know, again, just a great young player playing really consistently right now. It's really not even that much need to say. He hits it far, just playing great tee to green, and really should set up well for this course. You know, he's got distance just like a lot of the other players I've mentioned, and he's just playing solidly in every facet. So this has been a place that's been sort of friendly to first-time winners. So you could see Justin Thomas win here. Probably someone I'll definitely have some exposure to in cash games, just because I think he'll be high-owned and just because he's been so solid. So that's my view on Justin Thomas. Going down here, Harris English, been out of form. Could make a GPP play. Maybe I might have like one lineup with Harris English, but not much. Mark Leishman has a really nice record at this event. He's now finished top 30 in his last 3 events on tour. And after sort of starting slowly, he's really sort of rounding into form. He's got a great record at this event. He's got like 5 top 12s in like 6 appearances. So Mark Leishman really sort of owns this course. I really like him this week just because he's playing well. He's got the good course history, and he's coming in sort of, you know, playing really well too. So just fits this course. Mark Leishman, I think he makes for another great cash game play. Not too expensive, so you can build around him. Brendan Todd, last year's winner, I won't be having exposure to this week. I think he's just a little bit off. I don't like the fact it's going to be wet. Doesn't favor shorter hitters as much, so I just don't like his price. I'm fine fading him this week. Charles Howell has a good price tag on him, and he's got a good record at this event. You know, he doesn't win much on tour, but he's solid and he makes a lot of cuts. So at this price, I kind of like Charles Howell. You know, I was going through this price range here, and you have Charles Schwartzel, who's just, you never know what he's going to do. Charlie Hoffmann, who has been playing well and is probably another option at this price. I just never trust Charlie Hoffmann, but he does have an okay record at this event, and he's been playing well. So I think a lot of people are going to be on Charlie Hoffmann. My view is that I'm okay sort of fading Charlie Hoffmann this week. I just have this feeling that he might not be a great play this week, but that's just a sort of a gut feeling. It's a bit of a tougher course, bit of a different course than Hoffman's been playing recently, and I don't know. I just feel like maybe it doesn't set up too well for him, but I think he's going to be a popular pick. I'd probably rather roll Howell. And also Rory Sabatini has a pretty good record of this event too, and he's been playing well. So, you know, in this price, you also have Keegan Bradley, who's got a great record of this event. So you have about 3 or 4 players in this price range you need to choose from. For cash game purposes, I will probably go with Charles Howell. I will have some GPP exposure to Rory Sabatini and Keegan Bradley, and I'll probably fade Schwartzel and Hoffmann. That's just my feeling on it. You know, there's arguments you can make for any 5 of these players. So I like Howell for cash games. I like Sabatini and Bradley for GPPs, and that's sort of my feeling on those players. So moving down a little bit, one player I really like this week, and I think is going to be a little bit overlooked, Danny Lee. Really good young player. Has been playing extremely well recently, and you can sort of see his recent results. So in his last 3 events, 22nd, 13, and 10th, and he played extraordinarily well last week. And he's got 2 top 20s at this event, and he's from Texas. So Danny Lee, I like Danny Lee a lot this week. I know his price is more expensive than it has been, but I think that's going to make his ownership levels low. And for GPPs, I love that. So Danny Lee's been putting great, fits this course well from a few different perspectives. He's ranked, like top 40 in par breakers, well in strokes gained putting. So I really think Danny Lee could have a big week here. He's talented. He's sort of been inconsistent in his career so far, but this just seems like a course that, and a sort of with his recent trending of playing well, that he could really take advantage this week and maybe land a top 5 or better. So I'm really on Danny Lee. I think people are sort of going to drift to other players rather than him, and I like him, especially for GPPs. So Daniel Berger definitely fits this course from a statistical perspective, I think. And I couldn't fault anyone for having exposure to him. I'll definitely have a little bit of GPP exposure to Daniel Berger. He just maybe has seemed a little bit out of form recently. That's the only thing poorly I'd say about him. One of my other favorite plays this week is Russell Henley. Henley's actually never played this course before, and I think that might stop people from using him, but I don't really think it's a big deal. You can see here Henley's last 4 events, 24th, cut, 21st, and a 4th. So, and the 21st was at the Masters. So he's coming into this event playing extraordinarily well. He's been really consistent so far on tour. I believe he's made like 15 of 16 cuts this year. And he fits this course really well too. People don't realize, but Henley's actually ranked 30th in driving distance on tour, and he's ranked 7th in strokes gained putting. So from a statistical perspective, I really like Russell Henley this week. He's one of my favorite plays at this price. He's under 8,000, and he's a 2-time winner on tour. He's only 25. He's already won twice, and both of his wins came on par 70s, which this week is a par 70. So I think this week sets up great for Henley. He's another player who plays well in the wind. So if it gets windy, I think that actually benefits him. Probably my favorite value play of the week, Russell Henley. So now that I've spit that out, let's keep looking down here. There's some interesting plays, but a lot of these players are just out of form. Nick Watney, started well, has not been playing well recently. James Hahn, a little bit out of form right now. And then there's Brooks Koepka, who for some reason is only priced 7,700. I think this is just too low for Brooks Koepka. I know he hasn't done a whole lot recently. He had a little bit of an injury, but he's recovered. But he's just too talented to be this low in price. So at 7,700, putting him under Charles Howell, putting him under even like Harris English, I think that's just ridiculous. So you have to have some exposure to Brooks Koepka at 7,700. I'll have exposure to him in cash games and GPPs at this price. He's only played here once before and missed the cut, but the course sets up fine for him. He's just too good a player in every sort of facet of the game that he can't have success here. Big hitter. I really like Brooks Koepka this week at this price. He'll probably be one of the higher owned plays, and for good reason. So definitely keep Brooks Koepka in mind. Definitely need to get him in some lineups. I will just mention Scott Brown quickly. He's made like 5 or 6 cuts in a row and has some like top 30, top 15 finishes. He is just playing really consistently, and he's a really good putter as well. So he caught my eye this week once I saw his recent form, and hasn't played a lot at this event, but just someone he's a good player when he's playing well. And, I believe he's won on tour before at least once. Someone to sort of just think about for GPPs, I think, at Scott Brown, 7,600. If he keeps playing like he is, a top 20 or even a top 15 is definitely in his range. And at 7,600, that's pretty good. So I like him as kind of a GPP swerve at this price. My first pick would be Koepka, but definitely keep him and Scott Brown in mind. So moving down a little bit here. You can see, the pickings get a little bit tougher. It's still sort of a weaker field once you get to the bottom end. So picking players out of this price range is going to be important. We still have Graham DeLaet here. Obviously, DeLaet's not been playing well, which is why he's priced lower now. He used to be priced more consistently in the $9,000 range. But you can see he's sort of started to put it together. He's made 3 of his last 4 cuts. Played actually well for 3 rounds last week and then just had a really bad final round. So, he's got a really good record at this event. And that's one reason why I'm bringing up his name this week. His last 2 times playing at the Byron Nelson, he's finished 7th and 10th. He's a big hitter. And, when Graham DeLaet's on, he is one of like the top 20 or 30 players on tour, even though he hasn't won yet. But his tee to green game is just fantastic. So at 7,400, I'm definitely going to have some exposure to Graham DeLaet. I just think this course sets up too well for him not to. And there just isn't enough talent in this field not to consider him. So I like Graham DeLaet this week, especially for GPPs. He's sort of my GPP play at this price. Maybe he'll be more higher owned than I think just because the field is so weak. But yeah, I like having a little bit of exposure to him. I'm not going to have a ton. I probably won't use him much in cash games because I'm not sure if I trust him yet. But definitely someone you need to consider this week at that price. So moving down, there are some more interesting plays. JJ Henry, actually, I should just point out, he's got a fantastic record at this event. I believe he's made like 10 of his last 10 cuts here. So someone to consider maybe throwing in a GPP lineup. Matt Jones does not have a good record here. I believe he's missed like 5 cuts in a row at this event. So, something to consider there. Not a good record. And moving down the list, you can see, the field gets really weak. Chad Collins, I don't know why he's ranked at 7,200 this week. Weak him. Just players that should not be salaried that high. So a little bit of a strange structure this week. George McNeil, player I need to just point out, made his last 6 or 7 cuts on tour, playing really solid golf. Doesn't have a great record at this event, but at that price, you really have to consider him this week. And Hunter Mahan, the same sort of deal, just makes a ton of cuts. So both of these players are sort of in play. I would probably lean George McNeil over Hunter Mahan personally, but they're both in play this week. Definitely just going on past form and recent form. They're both great cash game plays, I think. But there are a couple players I like better. Martin Laird fits this course very well. Hasn't done a whole lot lately, but at 7,100, good driver of the golf ball, hits it big, and has played this course a few times. So I kind of like him at the price too. I would probably lean McNeil over Laird, but I really like Martin Laird for GPP purposes. I think this is the type of course he can sort of pop up on and have a good week. So definitely someone to consider. Moving down, again, you can kind of see how the field can gets down here. Brian Harman, a player I'll consider too. He's had some good results recently. Let's just take a look at his scorecard. Missed the cut at the Wells Fargo, but then 8th at the Players and 10th at the Crown Plaza. So has had a couple top 30s at this event. So, this week sort of maybe sets up well for him too. Definitely at 7,000, someone I'll have exposure to in GPPs. I like Harman for that purpose. I don't trust him for cash games, but for a big tournament at this price, I definitely would throw Brian Harman in a lineup or two. So there are 2 players here that I really like. The first is Brandon Steele. He's had really good success at some other windy tournaments this year. The Honda Classic and the Valero Texas Open. I believe he top 10 both. So, and he's just been consistent all year. I believe he's missed 2 cuts, and otherwise he just is really consistent. So hits the ball a ton. 7th in driving distance, I believe. Top 20 in par breakers. So he makes a lot of birdies. I really like this week for Brandon Steele, and if it gets windy, I think it even favors him even more. So he's played here twice and missed the cut both times, and I think that's going to scare some people away. But I'm not going to be scared away on Brandon Steele this week. I think it sets up great for him, possibly even to get a win. He's been playing that well. He's been tee to green. He's been one of the best players this year, and all he needs is a good putting week. So Brandon Steele is definitely in play for me, especially considering that Keegan Bradley's won here. Not a good putter. So he's one of my favorite plays this week, 7,000, super cheap. And then right below him, Morgan Hoffmann too. Just another good young player, super consistent this year. Actually has 2 6th and a 15th at this event, I believe. So he's already played this course well. And then you can see his past record. he's just been playing super consistent. So for cash game purposes, I really like Morgan Hoffmann this week. I think he brings a lot of consistency and just a lot of good play. Really good price too. So those are my two top plays at 7,000 for sure. Definitely like Herman a little bit for sort of a swerve contrarian GPP play. And then Martin Laird as well, someone I'll keep in mind for that purpose too. So moving down under 7,000 here. Let's boot out this last price range. So Jason Duffner, past winner here, been picking up his play a little bit. I don't trust him much, maybe for a GPP, but I just still don't see the TD Green game back for Duffner to where it was when he was winning all the time. I just don't trust him enough, basically. DA points, someone else who has a good record here who I don't trust. If he was cheaper, if he was like 6,000, I'd throw him in a GPP player too. Maybe use him on Victiv, but I'm not using him on DraftKings this week. He's just too expensive. There's better plays, in my opinion. Michael Putnam, not a great year so far. Used to be a good guy for cash games because he made a lot of cuts, but I'll wait till he gets back in form to use him. You can see how weak the field is. I'm skipping over most of these guys for good reason. I will mention Jeff Overton. Good record of this event and actually played well last week. He's sort of turned into like a tour grinder, Jeff Overton. He does actually make a fair share of his cuts. I know he's missed a few cuts there, but played well last week and has a good record of this event. So at 6,700, if you're looking for sort of a GPP filler play, Jeff Overton could get you a top 20. Like he's done well on tour. He's come close to winning numerous times, and he can have a big week. So big hitter of the golf ball as well. I don't hate him at 6,700. I wouldn't use him in cash, but I'd probably opt for someone else. But for GPP play, I'll have a few Jeff Overtons I think this week. So moving down, Anel Cabrera. You could always throw him in a GPP lineup. Just someone who you never know is going to win. Of course, this course does favor longer hitters, so it's certainly plausible. Angel Cabrera shows up this week and has a good finish. Yeah, definitely at 6,600, you can consider him. One of my more two favorite plays, though, this week, Scott Piercy at 6,600 and Jim Herman at 6,600. Jim Herman, really, really good ball striker. One of the top ball strikers on tour right now, actually. He ranks really highly in ball striking and strokes gained tee to green. And you can see his last four events, made his last four cuts, 4th at the Zurich Open, 13th at Wells Fargo, and 33rd last week. I think this event sets up really well for him. He's been improving his putting, hits a lot of greens, and he's just been hitting it really well. At 6,600, I'm more than willing to use him down there for my GPP lineups. I think he's got a lot of potential. If he has a good week with the putter, again, someone who could land you in the top 10, and for that price, that's huge. And then Scott Piercy's had a good record this event as well. Another big hitter, someone who plays well tee to green, and I believe he showed up well last week as well. I believe he played last week. Yes, so made the cut last week. And so at 6,600, I'd definitely be willing to give Scott Piercy a chance just because of his record of this event. And at that price, definitely someone I could consider. So I'll mention Adam Hadwin played really well last week. Really good tee to green player when he's on. And just another player actually this price range that you could consider. So you can kind of see, I don't like a ton of players, around 67 to 7,000. But, once you get down in the 66, there are some plays that are interesting. Scott Piercy, Jim Herman, Adam Hadwin, all players you could consider for your GPP lineups this week. And I think have some potential. So, and then moving down, there's one more player I'm going to mention. And that is Carlos Ortiz. Ortiz is one of the bigger hitters on tour. He actually hits it. It actually is ranked 25th on tour in driving distance. Really good young player. Won 3 times on the web.com tour last year. So this is like a really high class young player. He has had numerous top 20s on tour. Played really well at the Valero Texas Open. You can see he got 15th. Another windy event, another tough course, and I think this week favors him. I think he plays better on tough courses. That's where he's had sort of more of his top finishes. Ortiz has had more of his top finishes on tougher courses, and just another first time player who I think could do well here. at 6,400, I just really like his price. I think he's priced way too low for how solidly he's been playing this year. So yeah, he's one of my top. He's definitely my cheapest value play this week. Someone I really like Jim Herman, like Scott Piercy, and could it maybe even use some Adam Hadwin as well, and Jeff Overton. So sort of my plays under 7,000 I'm liking. Don't think there's anyone to consider too much once you get under that. Charlie Belgian, a big hitter who pops up every now and then with a big finish, but I wouldn't have too much exposure to him. He's just way too inconsistent, misses a ton of cuts. So does have a couple good finishes here. If you really want to go bargain hunting with GPP play, I guess you could throw in Charlie Belgian. He'd be my only other player I'd suggest. Yeah. So that was pretty much it. Went through everyone. Pretty much it. That's pretty much it for the DraftKings. Went through everyone. So we went through all the salary ranges. There's some really interesting plays under 7,000 this week. I think Scott Piercy is a good play. I think Adam Hadwin's a good play. Jeff Overton and Carlos Ortiz and Jim Herman. So a lot of players for me to consider in that price range. I think that's really good for making GPP lineups this week. And I think you can make some really interesting lineups with some top players. So combining, like a Day and a Brandt Snedeker or, Gary Woodland and Jason Day. I think you can do that this week. I think you can make some really nice top-heavy lineups with some of the top players this week. And use those value plays. You also have Brandon Steele there at 7,000. You also have Hoffmann at 7,000. Martin Laird's there at 71. George McNeil, who's been playing great, is there at 71. I think there's a lot of good plays, once you get under 75, once you get under 7,200, I should say, that have just been sort of priced too low. So take advantage of that this week, and don't be afraid to stack those big players and use some of those value plays, because it's sort of a strange course. No one type of player has done well on it. So look for players who just played well in tough conditions and played tougher courses well. I think players who are striking the ball well or putting well too. Look for those players who are coming in good recent form. And that's what I'm doing this week. Not giving as much credit to recent history. I want players who are playing solidly coming into this week, because it's a tough course, and they're going to have to deal with possibly some windy conditions. So that's what I'm doing this week. Make sure you check out the forums at RotoCurve this week. You can always throw me a question on Twitter at the Fantasy Grind if you have any questions. But make sure you check out the site, because RotoCurve has a ton of great tools. Go on the forums. They give you points just for posting there. You can get some nice T-shirts. You can also check out the baseball section. So, make sure you check out RotoCurve. We're always looking to decrease fantasy players' learning curves. And good luck making your lineups, guys. I'll talk to you next week, and have a good week.